We're continuing our conversation, our overtime session, so to speak, on WXYZ.com, talking about real estate and inclusion. Let me ask you, you have a Spring
Summit.
Spring Summit.
Yes.
What is that?
So a year after the spring meeting, Urban Land Institute hosts a Spring Summit in the same city that the spring meeting was held. We had over 4,000 professionals here last year from all over the world.
Wow.
So this year on April 29th and April 30th at Cobo Hall.
All right, so it's coming up.
You know, right? New name. And it's a day-long program that really focuses on emerging trends in real estate. And we've been very dedicated to bringing more persons of color and women onto panels, really diversifying those speaking opportunities so that there's a broad voice in all the topics that we're presenting. So we're very excited about it.
All right. The Pathways program that you talked about on air in the first segment, I know you wanted to expound upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so that actually was started as part of the spring meeting last year. When we were planning the meeting, we were very considerate about how to make the planning for that meeting inclusive. We wanted to have developers of color, professionals that are persons of color be a part of planning that meeting to make sure that it truly represented what was happening in the city of Detroit. Because this was our opportunity to showcase Detroit to the real estate global community. So we started Pathways for Inclusion, and we brought 100 professionals that were persons of color to the table, and they've maintained their membership since that event. And other district councils across the country have picked up on this programming, and they're replicating it across the United States.
Okay. Derek and Dina, when you're talking to young people who are trying to figure out what they want for a career, what is it you say to them about real estate, and how do they get on the word that we've been using is the pathway? Is it something that you go to college for and you have to take certain courses, or is it just one of those fields that you just got to get in, get your license, study, and get going?
Well, just first, I think it's important to acknowledge that for many of the students that I think both Derek and I have had the opportunity to influence or work with, talk to about this topic, architecture, design, real estate development is not necessarily something that they are familiar with or would necessarily think of. And so for me, when I'm speaking with them, really what I'm trying, it's really about their opportunity to influence the very environment in which they live. It's very, I think it's about engagement and empowerment at a fundamental level for them, and then about the fact that those decisions about the, whether it's the structures or the open space within which they and their families live, those decisions don't need to be made by other people. They themselves can get into the industry and become a part of shaping what those places are like.
Mm-hmm. Derek, most young people today, money is very important to them, and sometimes they think about money before they think about the longevity of the career. They're going to ask you, can I make good money in this profession? And your answer is what?
My answer is always the same. As I tell them, I haven't worked a job in over 10 years, and I pursue purpose every day. I wake up and do what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. And so in this field, you really have to be called to the field to do this type of development, because there's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, there's a lot of risk. And so there's some weeks you might make money, there's some weeks where you'll lose a ton of it. And so really you have to be in it for the right reasons. And so what I do, what I always encourage young people to do is, if you're interested, come to my office, come spend a summer, intern, figure out if this is really what you want to be doing. And if it is, then take the necessary steps to get there.
Final question for all three of you, and like all of you to weigh in on this. As you look at Detroit and Southeast Michigan today, project yourself out 10, 15 years. What do you think this region will look like?
So real estate development should be about creating solutions for community. And youth programs, like the ones that Dina and Derek are talking about, are so amazing and have so much potential for the future, because when youth come into a design charrette process or a real estate design process, they approach it from the perspective of solving the solutions that they see as needed in their community. And they add such a tremendous dimension to real estate design. So as we move forward in the future, I think the more inclusive development is and the more diverse voices we get to the table, the more we'll be able to create comprehensive solutions for community. I think you're going to see a lot of activity in Detroit neighborhoods. That's where Derek and I focus most of our efforts are in the neighborhoods of Detroit.
Okay.
And
neighborhoods coming back?
Neighborhoods are coming back. There's a strategic investment effort on the part of foundations in the city of Detroit, but it's still difficult. There's still gaps in funding. There's still barriers that have to be overcome. But I see over the next 5 to 10 years, I think you'll see a lot more activity, a lot more investment, but also a greater challenge to keep the existing residents engaged and provide equity in those developments. And we really need to focus more on keeping the youth at the table because their perspective is invaluable.
Derek, East Jefferson area is certainly making some comebacks. What will it look like 10, 15 years from now?
We're hoping it looks like an inclusive neighborhood in Detroit. And I think one of the things that we hear from residents oftentimes is that there's a fear of displacement, there's a fear of what's to come as they see the cranes and the crates go up. And so one of the things that we're trying to be very intentional with is making sure that they're
the whole regentrification issue, which is controversial and touchy.
Right, and so I think one of the things that we're trying to do from lessons learned in other places is put specific principles in place that are actually prevalent in each of our deals. So examples of that is in all of our retail leases, we have local hiring incentives for all of our tenants, where if they hire 50% or more of the residents from the neighborhood, they get a lease incentive, a discount on their lease rate. And so we're being very intentional with making sure that there's inclusion, local hiring for contracting. So there's one job that we just did, 15 contractors on the site, 12 of them were from the neighborhood, could literally walk to work. And so we didn't have to hire security because those folks are living in the neighborhood, they're watching the site, and this development is a part of what they want to see happen.
And you got to think about those times when maybe the economy is not doing well and things maybe get a little tense with the economy. People, if they're invested in their neighborhood, they protect their neighborhood.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I agree with all of those sentiments. I think at its core, it's really about people feeling that they have agency with respect to the development that they see happening near them, around them. I think really projects are most successful when the stakeholders, the residents, the folks affected, whether it's commercial or private sector or simply residents, when they feel that the development is being done for and with them rather than simply, to them by others or around them. So I think the idea of, that Derek just described, where, there's voice, there's agency, there are people who, again, they're working at the site, for example, they have a personal stake in what's happening. That's what leads to successful outcomes for projects, I think, in the end. And so 10, 15 years from now, I'm hoping that we're seeing a city that really represents a landscape in which many projects have those characteristics.
We certainly hope so. Jill, Derek, Dina, thank you so much for joining us on air and online, and keep us updated.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.